As soon as humans had enough time on their hands to get bored, instead of running from something that was trying to eat them, they took time to invent games. This documentary will focus on those games designed to take place in the cave, as opposed to the athletic games that would usually take place outside the cave, like trying not to be eaten. Games have been around for a long time, but mainstream games have gone through an interesting change over the last 40 years, due in large part to three main innovations. So, if you are someone who still pulls out the backgammon board or the Monopoly game when everyone needs something to do at the next family gathering, you might be surprised to learn that there's a lot of choices out there, and it is a sure thing that you will find something that fits your interest and style of play. Gamer, a person who plays games, and especially video or computer games. Due to the advent of computers in our daily lives, the idea of being a gamer is largely associated with using computers to play games. The term gamer is quite common in modern parlance, and people often associate whether they consider themselves as a gamer or not a gamer. But the term gamer has a broader association than merely computer games among those who play games. This may leave those who have less of an association with games feeling a bit confused about all this talk of games. Let's look back a bit to the 1960s. As stated earlier, games have been around for a long time, and we can generally group games into four main categories: board games, table games, card games, and party games. Board games would be those games that require a game map for players to follow in order to accomplish the objectives of the game. This would include simple board layouts like chess and checkers, to more complicated layouts like Monopoly, Sorry, or Clue. Table games would be those games that rely heavily on using props or game pieces, but may not need a board in which to guide players. This would be games that may need a dedicated table like billiards or ping pong, or could be games that merely require props such as dice for a game of Yahtzee or tiles for the game of dominoes. It would also include battle simulation games such as Squad Leader. Card games would be those games that primarily rely on the use of cards by using traditional playing cards to play something like hearts, spades, or poker, or specialized card decks for games such as Millbournes or Pit. Party games would be games that are largely social in nature and are usually played in a relaxed seating arrangement with limited or only a few props. This would be games like Pictionary or charades. In the late 70s, three interesting developments happened within a two-decade period. Those three developments were role-playing games, mainstreaming of computers, and what are referred to as Euro games or Euro board games. In the late 70s, miniature wargaming, a table game, quickly developed beyond the realm of historical battle simulations and into the realm of fantasy and science fiction themed battle. This branched off into the direct evolution of what we now call role-playing games, or RPGs. RPGs are largely associated with one of the first RPGs called Dungeons and Dragons. RPGs had a couple different effects on the way we played games. It altered the winning conditions for games. No longer was there just one winner, but the idea that all players could win. This idea of a cooperative goal was more about telling a story than achieving a winning condition for just one of the players. This idea has bled into board games with games like Pandemic, where the objective is for all the players, different specialists, to win against the scripted outcome of the game conditions, the outbreak of a worldwide pandemic. Essentially, it is the players working together to defeat the rules of the game. Then in the 1980s, computers became a common item found in homes. Players can now more easily find opponents in which to play against because those games are now online and accessible. Needless to say, computers have facilitated the variety and ease of access to games. Finally, in the early 90s, a new kind of game took hold. These are commonly referred to as Euro games. Although many of these games came out of Europe, today the term Eurogame is more a reference to the style of game. Many classic American board games have two game elements that play a major role in how the game functions. Classic American games often rely heavily on luck. And classic American games often are built around player elimination as part of the game's mechanics. Eurogames instead rely heavily on strategy, often with multiple winning conditions and ways to acquire points in the game. Eurogames are also built on the premise that the game should be actively enjoyed by all players for the entirety of the game. This impact of RPGs, computer, and Eurogames means that board games, table games, card games, and party games often blend and merge to create a variety of gameplay and style. If the last game you played was Monopoly at the last family gathering, next time, maybe try Star Wars Monopoly, or maybe even something brand new.